Hello, Daylight Church Online. I'm H.L. Hussman. I'm the lead pastor here at Daylight, and we just want to say thanks for tuning into our broadcast and being a part of our online community. We've been brainstorming ways that we can effectively and efficiently connect more with people in remote locations that are watching us online, and I have a few opportunities I'd like you to know about. Number one, if you would introduce yourself, we would love to know you. You can email online@daylightchurch.com. That's online@daylightchurch.com. Just tell us who you are, where you're watching from, how you found out about us, and any other relevant information that you wanted to share. We would love that opportunity. Secondly, we have a website, mydaylightchurch.com, and on that website is a tab that says Join the Daylight Crew. There's things that you can do off-site that would benefit us and allow you to engage more with the community. You can join our prayer team and our prayer ministry. You can join our study team and our service team. You can join our small groups, and we're happy to Zoom you in. There's all kinds of opportunities on that tab, and we would appreciate if you would fill it out and make yourself known to us. If you believe that Daylight is kind of your home away from home and you don't have a faith community of your own, and you would like to support and be a part of this financially, you can do so at daylightchurch.com/giving or by texting the number 84321 and completing a short form and selecting Daylight Church as the place you're going to give. If there's any way we can serve you, we would love the opportunity, and you can always reach us at online@daylightchurch.com. Thanks, and enjoy the service.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Brosius, and it's an honor to be back here, be on the stage with you all, and able to share with you all. And in reality, it's really an honor to be able to be among the stable of speakers that this church is able to assemble while HL takes his mini sabbatical. I mean, it's cool that there's so many people that he can pull from, and it's cool to see how different people will approach this stuff from a different angle. I love that there's a lot of variety. I think it's good for the congregation when they hear it from different angles. It's good for all of us because it challenges us to think of this stuff just a little bit differently. And I really think it speaks to the leadership structure of this church and what this church is trying to accomplish too, because it shows that we're not asking you to follow a script, We're not asking you to become a robot. We're not asking you to be just a ditto head who responds and just says everything that HL says to you. Like you're supposed to think for yourself here. We're not asking you to grow into a robot. We want you to grow into a Christ-like version of yourself already. We celebrate who you are, and we want you to grow from who you are. And it's not like that in every church. It's incredible to be a part of something like this. I'm excited to plant something like this in Berea, which is coming up. It feels like it's coming up really, really quickly. And you're only going to get me for 5 or 6 more sermons before you only see me once a year, if that, once or twice a year, because we'll be planting this thing in Berea. And since there's not a script, I talked to HL about it, and he thinks it's cool that I just unpack some themes through the book of John over the next 5 or 6 sermons. I think it's the best way to give a consistent amount of content that works good. They'll be 5 or 6 weeks apart or whatever it is, but it'll be. I think this is the best way to do it. So I want to start today in John chapter 1, and to promote this whole passage right here, I want to ask the question. Do you ever look at the world and see just how broken this thing is? Just how broken it is, and you just think, man, if these people just knew who Jesus was, if they would just have a relationship with Jesus and get to know him, they'd make better decisions. They'd be able to get along with one another. I mean, why can't this world just see Jesus for who he is? Or maybe you go to church with people and you say, man, you would make so much better decisions if you just hand this part of your life over to Jesus. And if we're being honest, we see that in ourselves. We're like, if I could just hand this part of my life over to Jesus, or if I had done it, my life might look differently. We spend so much time not even paying attention to Jesus for who he is. And Jesus is the hope of the world. He's the king of the world. He is the purpose for this whole creation. But we forget that. We don't think about it. And I think this happens for a good reason, to be honest with you. There's a reason why he enables this. Jesus gives us a little distance between us and him so that we can take our eyes off him, so that we can have our personal space. Because if Jesus was imposing his presence in such a way that we could never take our eyes off him, then Jesus would be turning us into robots. Jesus would be turning us into like a remote control car. He doesn't want us to be a remote control car. He wants a dynamic relationship with him. He wants our heart. He wants us to be who we are because of how we are responding to him. Responding is a big deal. So, it's good, but it's also complicated and crappy sometimes. So I want to talk about that as we go into John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave them the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or of husband's will, which is weird, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me, because he was before me.' Out of his fullness we have received grace in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came only through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known." I love this passage. This is the first half of the first chapter of the book of John. It's the prologue for the whole gospel, which means that all the themes that get unpacked throughout this 28-chapter book, they're all really right here in this first chapter, this first half of that chapter. And it's so poetically made. It's so eloquently crafted. I mean, you can just read this over and over again and get more out of it. I mean, that's why it's so famous. That's why when you start becoming Christian, they say, read the book of John so frequently, because it's all here and it's all in this passage. It's great. Particularly that first line. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In that one verse right there, you really get a Christian's view of the whole world. Right there. I mean, in the beginning was the Word, takes you right back to the first chapter of the first book of the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 1, where God is speaking this world into existence. It says that he's looking over a formless void, and he begins to speak it in a way that takes this chaotic void and begins to bring order to it. As God is speaking over that void, he says, "Let there be light." And light appears. And he begins to separate sea from the land. He fills this world with vegetation, and he fills this world with animals. He creates this beautiful, orderly thing, and he says that it's good. In the beginning was the Word, takes you back to the beginning, God speaking that world into existence, and saying Jesus was with him, because we know that Jesus is the Word. But there's another layer on top of that. It's not just Genesis chapter 1. And that's because when the word to us just means like the signifying thing of what we're talking about. But that word in Greek has additional content to it. The word in Greek is logos. Logos, it takes on a specific meaning in Greek. And I found a definition on pbs.com, of all places, that I really liked when I Googled it. It said, Logos is an eternal and unchanging truth, present from the time of creation, available to every individual who seeks it. And logos is actually, it's a concept that comes from a lot of Greek philosophers. I believe it's Heraclitus who talks about it the most. And it talks about this unifying reason for the world. It speaks of God's order in a way that everybody here has access to it. We all can see that this world is orderly. We see that it makes sense. And we see that it points to God. In the beginning was the Word isn't just God speaking the world into creation. It's the mind of God speaking the world into creation in a way that allows you to see who God is from looking at that creation. So when you read that, in the beginning was the reason that the world was made, the reasonability that made the world. And that reasonability was with God, and that reason was God. And then it goes on to say that the reason for the world became flesh and lived among us, dwelt among us. And I love Eugene Peterson's way of looking at this. When you read the Message paraphrase, he says that Jesus moved into the neighborhood. I love the imagery of Jesus moving into our neighborhood, like bringing his U-Haul and moving into the neighborhood. But then I realized we're all of us millennials, we're really crappy neighbors. You know, Jesus is a better neighbor than us millennials. You know, when Jesus moves into the neighborhood, he's not just somebody you see when you're drinking your coffee, looking out the window, and he comes out in his bathrobe, scampering into his mailbox, getting his newspaper, and walking back into the house. You know, when Jesus moves into the neighborhood, he's not just somebody you nod at when you're walking your dog. You know, Jesus is a good neighbor. Jesus is like your grandma as a neighbor. You know, Jesus gets to know you. Jesus asks questions about you. And Jesus gives you the opportunity to get to know him, to learn from him, to eat dinner with Jesus. Jesus is a constant, dynamic presence in the lives of the people that he lived with. Jesus is a good neighbor when he moves into the neighborhood. But it says, though the world was made through him, the world didn't recognize him. They didn't receive him for who he was. Isn't that crazy? The reason for the world becomes a person, moves into your neighborhood, spends time with you, and you don't recognize him for who it is? I mean, isn't that crazy? But, I mean, let's be honest. Jesus is kind of complicated, particularly if you try to understand him for all that he is. If you want to come at it like a scholar to understand Jesus for who he is, you're going to be out of your depth very quickly. I mean, all the people are. I mean, think about this. Think about the questions about Jesus that were asked over the first 400 or 500 of the years of this church that are clarified, and a lot of us take it for granted today. You know, is Jesus God the Father in human form? Or is Jesus, was he just a human being on this earth who became God after he was crucified and resurrected? Or, you know, maybe he's half God and half human. Or maybe it's like the Jehovah's Witnesses believe today still, that Jesus never lived an actual physical body. It just appeared to be a physical body. He was a spirit the whole time. I mean, all of those things I just suggested are exactly what the church rejected. It rejected all of that. And we all have to consider it, though. I mean, when we look at it, I mean, the church's official position is that Jesus is simultaneously 100% God and 100% human at the same time. And if you look at it from that angle, how can a human being be simultaneously not God by definition and God? It's complicated. Philosophers are still working at it. I mean, the position is right, but it's complicated. But fortunately, we don't arrive at Jesus through logic. We're not going to arrive at him through logic. He's very logical. He makes sense. He's real. But you're not going to arrive at him. You're not going to study microbiology and then move on to more complex organisms and understanding humanity, understanding society, understanding cosmology, putting them all together and saying, wow, this points to Jesus. It doesn't work that way. We don't arrive at Jesus through logic. We recognize Jesus for who he is when we're standing in his presence. When we stand in Jesus' presence and the Holy Spirit tugs at our heart, he pulls us towards him, and then we we try them out. We check it out. We say, we'll subscribe to your teachings. It's not really that much different if you were going to apply to Islam or the modern way of looking at the world or becoming woke. You try on the different tenets, and then you become a disciple in it. It's almost like you have to be born again a little bit. And that's what we see in John chapter 3. In John chapter 3, a man named Nicodemus comes and visits Jesus. And he says, Jesus, I'm a teacher of the law, and I can clearly tell that you are a very smart, authoritative teacher who understands things on a deep level. I can see your miracles, and I can tell that you're sent from God, but I still don't get everything. It doesn't make sense. And Jesus says, well, it's because you got to be born again, Nicodemus. You got to be born from above. And Nicodemus looks at him and he goes, you mean I have to go back into my mother's womb and then pass through her birth canal again? And Jesus goes, no, don't be an idiot. That's obviously a metaphor. It's a disgusting metaphor if it's literal. No, it's not. It's a metaphor. What I'm saying is if you take my teachings and you absorb them, you see them for the truth that they are, and you incorporate them in your life, it's going to change things about you. You'll still be yourself, but you're going to be so fundamentally different that when you encounter my teachings, it's almost like you've been born again, born from above. It's a metaphor, but it's an awesome metaphor. It makes sense. And we're all on the spectrum, though. We're all in this position of either we're going to accept Jesus' teachings, we're going to try Jesus' teachings on, become a disciple in what they are, or we're going to progress along that line and continue to incorporate Jesus' teachings in our life. There's nobody in here, nobody. I don't care how spiritual you are. I bet you I look up to you, but you haven't arrived yet. Nobody in here has arrived. We're all continuously pursuing Jesus, incorporating his teachings, walking with him, and trying to do his will on this earth. We're all in progress. And so, unfortunately, it's not an escalator spirituality we have here. It's not a passive thing in becoming more like Christ. There's always going to be barriers. Barriers in the way that block our growth, block our ability to accept Jesus even. And we see four of these that I could come up with while looking at John. There's probably more, but we only have a certain amount of time today. So the four we see in John chapter 5, Jesus heals a man who's not able to walk, a lame man, heals him how to walk, except he does it on Saturday. He does it on the Sabbath. And when you do a little bit of work on the Sabbath, you make the Pharisees angry because that's against the law to do work in Israel in that time. And Jesus says, you don't understand the heart of this law. That's the problem. But he's going to violate their rules. In John chapter 6, Jesus takes a schoolboy's lunch with bread and fish, and he feeds 5,000 people with a Lunchable. Jesus is able to feed that many people. And all these people, they're like, this is remarkable. Let's follow Jesus. He feeds us. He's great. They stand in his presence, and Jesus gets right in their face. And rather than trying to win the crowd over, he goes, if any of you want to follow me, you're going to have to drink my blood. They're like, what kind of vampire is this? They don't understand. They're like, if you look at the Israel law code, it's illegal to drink blood. You got to drain all meat of blood. This is offensive stuff. But underneath it, it makes sense, but Jesus didn't want superficial followers, and he's willing to offend people, even if that means they walk away, because he wants a substantial following of you and of all of us. And so we see in John chapter 7, Jesus' credentials get scrutinized. They're like, he's a prophet from Nazareth. Have you ever heard of anybody from Nazareth being a prophet before? And so they reject him. And in John 11, this is where it really hits the fan. And this is unique to the Gospel of John. Jesus heals a man named Lazarus. He heals him and raises him from the dead. He does this in the other Gospels, but only in the Gospel of John is this the triggering event that leads to his crucifixion. It's to overturning the tables in the other Gospels. But in the Gospel of John, he heals Lazarus from the dead, and he does it really close to Jerusalem. And so all those temple leaders are like, Look what happened. This guy healed somebody from the dead, and that is even more impressive than feeding 5,000 people from a Lunchable. This gets people pumped. Everybody's rallying them behind him. They're saying, this is our king. We are going to follow this guy into Jerusalem and put him on the throne. But the priests, they see him and they're thinking, holy crap, these people are calling him a king. And the real king of Israel is the emperor of Rome. And the emperor of Rome, when he hears that they're rallying behind a king, is going to get threatened. And he's going to come into this town. He's going to crush everything, and he's going to destroy our temple. So we better stop this before things get bad for us. And so they crucify Jesus. They crucify Jesus out of fear in the Gospel of John to protect their temple, which is crazy because this is what leads to the destruction of their temple if you keep following along. But Jesus threatens their agenda. Jesus threatens these people's agenda, and so they outright reject him. And we see this happening in our own lives, don't we? Maybe it's a little bit different sometimes. Jesus is going to violate our rules. The example I could think of, really, where Jesus violates our rules is sometimes we don't want to participate in high churches, or the new people to church that are millennials that are like mad at the elderly who want to hang on to their organs and hang on to their hymns, and then the hymn singing people being mad at the young people for wanting to appeal to the new generation. We all get mad when people don't worship the way that we want them to. It's very easy to do that. And Jesus sometimes asks us to set aside our rules for a more authentic version of himself. Not all the time, but sometimes he will violate our rules. Sometimes he's going to offend us. He's going to ask things of us that we don't want to do. He wants us to forgive people. Think about that. Forgiving people is not easy. We are supposed to forgive those who trespass against us as he forgives us as our trespasses. But let's be honest, not all trespasses are equal trespasses, when I think of trespassing, I think of somebody stepping on my lawn who I don't want on my lawn. But some trespasses are devastating. Some trespasses are things that affect you 20 years later, and you're still thinking about when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Some of these trespasses are horrible, and you're supposed to forgive those people. That's pretty offensive. It's worthwhile. It's good to do it, and it's not, it's something to work towards. Maybe you need counseling to do it, but on the surface, it's pretty offensive. You don't want to do that. And then this is a big one. Sometimes we question Jesus' credentials. It's very different today. I don't think there's anybody in here like, I don't know if I can trust anybody who comes from Nazareth. I don't think that really fits our modern setting. Most of us couldn't pick Nazareth out on a map. We don't care if anybody comes from Nazareth. We care about your ability. We care about your ability to speak. We're divorced from that world so much that it means nothing to us. But there are new ways of questioning Jesus' credentials today. Is Jesus really God? Was Jesus really crucified? Was he really resurrected? You start asking things of yourself. You start asking these questions. The more current form is, was Jesus a myth? Is Jesus really just named after some Egyptian god? Is Jesus named after Mithra? There's a guy named Robert Price out there. He's not really a respected scholar, but he's gotten a lot of press over the years, less recently. But he says that Jesus is just a legend. Jesus never existed. And he thinks he can prove it. He doesn't. But these things are what people are reading on the internet. And it's easy to get in church and being like, I love Jesus. I accept his love. My faith is just me bathing in cotton candy all the time. It just feels great. I love it. But then Jesus asks you not to have sex with your girlfriend. And you're like, whoa, were you really resurrected? Once it starts to get a little bit painful, when he starts asking things of us that may be a little bit difficult, that's when we start saying, do I really believe this stuff? Do I believe this stuff this much? I believe it enough to connect with my dad. Me and my dad have been worshiping together for 30 years. I don't know if I believe it this much. Because Jesus is going to trample our agenda. Jesus absolutely will trample our agenda. There are so many things in our lives that we want to work out in a certain way, and it just doesn't. The person we want to marry marries somebody else. How many of us have degrees that don't lead to our field that we're in? Or maybe it did lead to the field, but when you look at the amount of overtime that we're not getting paid for, we're making less money than if we worked at McDonald's. This is common stuff. A lot of things will happen when you don't get your way. And Jesus is saying, will you follow me when I don't give you what you want? If you do follow me, I'm going to give you something better, especially if you're willing to look at it from the right angle, but it might not be what you were asking for. These things will get in the way of your growth. They definitely get in the way of my growth. These are things that happen to us who are called to be more Christ-like, to be in deeper union with Christ. But here's the good news. Jesus didn't come into this world and give you a one-time ultimatum, like a high-pressure timeshare sales pitch. He didn't come in here and say, get your life together now, or it's the lake of fire. You're going to burn. You're going to burn for eternity if you don't listen to me right now. That's not what he does. He doesn't do anything like that. I realize there's so many people who preach just like that. There's so many people who preach like that in America, and I think it's disgusting. But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus doesn't act like that. He moves into the neighborhood, makes himself present with you. And if you listen to Tony Evans when he was here, when he dwelt among us, he was tabernacling among us. He was making his holy presence known to us, made it so that we could experience him for a long term. And he was here tabernacling for 3 years. And his Holy Spirit has been here for 2,000 and counting. Jesus is present in this community. He's present with the people that you go to church with. And he's creating a community of people who can be patient with you. Because growth isn't linear. You don't have to get it together overnight. Because if you do get it together, there's going to be more to go. You just got to love Jesus for who you are, and he loves you for who you are. He loves you for who you are. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that this church doesn't need you to be a robot. It doesn't need you to be anything other than yourself and to pursue Jesus with as much earnesty as you possibly can. And we're here to encourage you along the way because we love you. And I want to know where you are in your life. Because when I talk about getting closer to Jesus, I don't just mean, are you looking at porn? Now, I don't just mean, have you been cussing? I don't mean that stuff. I mean, how's your finances doing? How's your marriage doing? How are you feeling towards the church in general right now? Do you have anything that is nagging you? Anything that's hurting you? Wherever you are, maybe good things are happening too. We want to share that with you. We want to walk alongside with you. We are with Jesus. This whole church intends to tabernacle with you.